I mean, you drive down any highway, and there's a lot of billboards down the side of the highway, and they've been there for a long time. People have spent a lot of money over the years to be on that sign, and there are no clicks.
Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I am your host, Tiffany-Ann Bottcher. If you are ready to scale your success, grow your business, and live that entrepreneurial life, click subscribe because we're about to get started. Welcome back to another episode. Today we're diving into the intricate world of marketing metrics, advertising, and the art of tracking real impact, which is essential for every business looking to turn their marketing dollars into tangible growth. Our guest, Jeff Greenfield, is a recognized pioneer in the field of attribution and analytics. With decades of experience helping businesses maximize their marketing investment, Jeff began his journey as a creative with a strong focus on media buying, only to discover a major gap in how results were measured and understood. Since then, he's founded multiple successful analytics businesses, including his latest venture, Provalytics, where he's taking a privacy-focused, statistical approach to marketing effectiveness. In today's episode, Jeff will focus and shed light on how businesses, big or small, can navigate today's complex advertising landscape, overcome challenges proposed by rising costs, and make sense of marketing data to grow with confidence. His insights on topics such as incrementality, the myth of clicks, and the power of impressions will be invaluable for any business owner. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Excited to be here.
It's one of these topics that we're going to dive right into, but before we do, let's talk a little bit more about how did you get into this part of your business? How did you find the passion?
Yeah, if someone had told me 20 years ago I would be spending this much time with numbers and stuff, I would say that they're crazy.
Yeah.
Because at heart, I'm a marketer. I'm a creative person. And the concept of looking at numbers and analytics just, I don't know, it's not sexy. It's not exciting. It seems kind of boring. Like, not that bookkeeping is boring, but I don't like bookkeeping like most business owners. It's boring. It is. All right. We both said it. So this to me is at first glance, it's boring, but the way I got into it was to solve a problem. I had a client that I was buying media for, and this is in the mid 2000s. And it was a publicly traded company, so a larger company. And a lot of times, when you're running your business, you're spending dollars on marketing, it's more of a consistent thing. Whereas with public companies, they have to hit like these quarterly numbers, which are sometimes arbitrary. So you get these calls where it's like, hey, you have to cut spend by 90%. And it has to happen today because it's 3 weeks before the end of the quarter. And I got one of those calls. And so I looked at the things that weren't working and I cut them. And I thought everything was fine. And it was fine for about 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, the bottom dropped out. Like all of a sudden, new customers stopped coming in. Now, granted, we had cut spend, but based upon the numbers and the analytics we were using, it should not have had that much of an impact. But it turned out that it did, because what I cut was taking a long time to have an impact, meaning it was filling our sales funnel. Mm-hmm. And when I cut it, we didn't see it immediately, but we saw it 2 weeks later. And that led me down this long path of recognizing that what we were using as a source of truth, if you will, for building and scaling the business was wrong. That's really what it comes down to. And we couldn't really trust it. And so that led me down this path of finding a better source of truth, or what I always like to say, something that was less wrong, because we really don't know. We can't tap into the side of people's brains. And I built and scaled a company that specifically focused on analytics for larger companies, and grew that company and exited it right before COVID, thinking I would never go back. And then when COVID came, one of the big things that happened is more and more people spent more and more time online. And also what came about was all the new privacy laws and regulations. And the platform that I built before was based on existing technology. And all of a sudden that was kind of going away. And so I saw an opportunity, and also felt kind of a service that I needed to come back, because I had a lot of existing customers and friends and colleagues that needed a solution. And so I built essentially something very similar, but it uses a totally different perspective that respects privacy now. And that's kind of how I got in there. Now, the way I look at it, the way the way I live with myself every day from a creativity standpoint of view and a sexiness standpoint of view with these numbers is that I'm kind of in the middle of everything that's going on in terms of advertising and marketing. So I really kind of get to see inside the head of some of the best and the top marketers in the world. So that's kind of sexy and that's kind of cool. And it's also to help people on their kind of transformation of making better decisions is somewhat of a challenge, but it's fun for me as well too. So that's kind of how I got to where I am.
Very interesting. It's, and there are these parts of the business that although are somewhat, quote unquote boring, it really is can be these huge difference makers in what is working and what isn't. And so often we either don't have access to the numbers that we need to make these informed decisions, or we have access and we don't look at them because we think, oh, I don't know, I don't know what it means, or maybe it's fine. I'm just going through. Oftentimes, business owners say, if I'm putting in advertising dollars, well, it must be working. Of course, it's working, but oftentimes that's not the case, and we really are just putting money in, and the fact that we've hired someone to manage that isn't always a safeguard, unfortunately.
No, you're 100% right, Tiffany, because really what it comes out to be is it has to do with this concept of what we call incrementality, meaning that how many more dollars is the advertising that I'm spending bringing in that I wouldn't have gotten anyway. And so it's kind of this concept that if you shut down all of your advertising and you stopped it all immediately, would all of your sales go away? Probably not. Like if you're a business and you've got good word of mouth and people know you and you get referrals, if you stopped all your advertising, those referrals would still be there. Maybe the advertising is helping some of it. So it's important to know what that incremental impact is, because a lot of times, a lot of the advertising you're doing is just kind of jumping in and taking credit for something that would have happened anyway.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a great example is someone says, hey, you should go, like if you're a photographer, for example, and somebody goes and says, hey, check out this photographer. They're really great. They'll do a great job for your wedding. So they go and they Google you and they check you out. And then they're talking to their partner about it. And then they happen to see an ad that you're running on Facebook because they came to your website. And then they go and they Google you again and they click on that ad that you have there, your brand search ad, and then they fill out a form. Well, according to Google, they got you that customer. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is also going to say they got you that customer. But the reality is that it's your referral that brought in that customer. Google just happened to be navigation. It showed them the way. And if it wasn't for that Google ad, you would have probably shown up anyway. And Facebook just happened to be kind of a reminder. You could actually give a little bit of an assist, if you will, to Facebook. But it's important to understand the difference between someone jumping in and grabbing credit and someone who actually brought you a customer. And the way we tend to look at it and the way traditionally folks have looked at it is it's this concept of this sales funnel. You advertise, you reach a lot of people. Not everyone is interested and in market right now, and then things kind of flow through, and then down at the bottom trickle out your new customers. And that kind of goes hand in hand with that saying from John Wanamaker, which is a famous marketer saying, which is half the advertising I spend is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. And that's the big issue. And that kind of sums up that whole issue of incrementality that we were talking about, which is which half is wasted. And that's a
Yeah.
scary thing because once you start advertising, I remember back in the early days, 20, 30, actually 35 years ago, I always had a Yellow Pages ad for my business. So I had a Yellow Pages ad. I would be in a coupon book and I would have a flyer in the paper. And so, the question is, which of those could I stop? I always knew when I ran a flyer that more people would come in, but thank goodness digital wasn't around then, because if digital was around, it would have really confused me
Right.
and would have been very difficult. So you end up as a business owner, you end up continuously running advertising because it's very tough to tell what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, we really see it from the bookkeeping side. Or, and to take that step further, the advisory side is, part of our advisory services to go through people and help set budgets and markers and KPIs and things, and then go through quarterly and say, are we on track? And so I often say, great advertising pays for itself. So, if you're going to do great advertising and people always look to the advertising to cut the budget. But the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to grow your business, rarely can you cut the advertising budget unless it was, really effective advertising. We wouldn't necessarily want to cut. But the fact is, so many people, like you said, have no idea which is the effective and which isn't. So you end up with people who say, I want to grow my business. Maybe they're already investing in Google Ads and they're spending, they started spending 500 and then it was 1,000. And before you know it, well, now we're spending $2,000 a month on Google Ads. But then they get that call from that, directory that's specific to their industry. And they say, if you just add another $800 here, well, we're going to provide you all these great leads. And then, well, someone else contacts them through cold email and says, Facebook marketing, it's for you. I got this for you. And before you know it, the advertising budget is so inflated, and the sales, if we look at a trend from the last 3 years, they're on their same, 30% year over year increase that they've been on before they invested in any of that advertising. But which do you cut? At this point, the business owner says, I want to grow. I can't cut any of this. I just want to keep growing. Meanwhile, it's really just money flowing out with no actual tangible anything as to which it's exactly what you explained.
Right. And the scary thing is that to contrast that like coupon book or the directory with the Facebook and the Google, that coupon book, you have a cost that's associated with it. It's like $800 for the month, let's say. And the advantage of that is that when someone gets that and they open the envelope, and those are actually opened a considerable amount, you have like almost like a one-on-one audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone flips through them and they see your name and it's there. But the digital stuff like the Google and the Facebook, these are real-time live auctions that go on. Literally,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is someone goes to their Facebook feed, is essentially it's like you can imagine as someone is scrolling along and the next ad is coming up, there's an auctioneer in the background who's saying, I've got someone and they're coming, and it's a, it's they live in Dayton, Ohio. Their likes are cigars and Volvos. How much am I bid on this person? And then it's like in real time, based upon what your settings were set or they were set for you, whoever has the highest bid gets to show up in that person's feed. And one of the issues with that we've seen across for some of our larger advertisers is the cost for advertising has gone up considerably year over year. So in Google in particular, if you're spending the same as you did last year, you're probably getting 35% less the amount of traffic than you were last year. That's how much costs have gone up. Now, some folks have said, well, that's due to the political season. And I would say, yeah, that's just a little bit. There's less inventory and stuff, but unless you're advertising on television and you're in those states, that's not what it is. If you look at how well these companies continue to do, they're oozing profits every quarter and every year
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that. And that is that hardest thing. And I think part of it is that one of the things that has digital advertising has done for most business owners is that it has moved the attention towards what we call the click. And so when we think about it, as a business owner, we think about like if we have a website, we want our lead form to get filled out, or we want to get phone calls in. And the way to do that is to get more people to the website. And so we hyper focus on clicks. And so over the years, we tend to invest dollars where we get more clicks. But that like breaks like the number one rule of advertising, because the number one rule of advertising is that you're buying eyeballs. You're not buying clicks. And those eyeballs are what we call impressions. And you buy these eyeballs, you buy these impressions, and the job is to build awareness. It's not to build clicks, it's to build awareness. Now, when awareness is built up enough, think about that funnel, you know, towards the smaller part, towards the bottom of that smaller part of the funnel. That's where the clicks come in. When there's enough awareness, that's what leads to clicks. But what ends up happening is that when we're hyper focused on clicks, we end up focusing our dollars just where the clicks come from. And
Mm-hmm.
so as a result, we defy this rule in advertising, which is called reach, which is we're now reaching a fewer number of people than we were before, which is great for Google. It's great for Facebook. It's great for every digital publisher because it puts us right in the realm of these real-time digital auctions where we're hyper competitive against our competitors, the high cost per click amount, and the small reach, if you will. And that's not good for advertisers at all.
I find the clicks is very interesting, and for two reasons. Number one, obviously, I mean, you drive down any highway, and there's a lot of billboards down the side of the highway, and they've been there for a long time. People have spent a lot of money over the years to be on that sign, and there are no clicks. And people
That's
have
right.
still felt that there was value to pay for that money. I actually remember being a kid and driving with my parents. I mean, I was probably pretty young, and I remember the company my dad worked for was on the billboard, and it was a thing. We took a family drive to go check it out on the billboard because it was like we're on the board. And I just
Right.
like, and so such a different, I mean, a different time, but obviously that very hard to measure any kind of clicks in that older average. Same with the newspaper, the directories, those types of things. But the other piece is, and so often people reach out anytime that you're running ads and stuff. People reach out and say, I can get your cost per click lower. That's their whole, they just want to, it's the race to the bottom on the cost of the click. And as someone who really opposes sales calls, I mean, I enjoy a sales call with a business owner that actually could potentially purchase my services. You want to talk about business and finances and metrics? I love it. This is great. But if I'm going to talk to just any person who maybe wants to have a business one day, or they have $5 set aside for their year-end tax, like, these are not my people.
Right.
Those are the people that I'm like, I don't want to spend time. I could spend time doing something else at that time. So I always say, like, I actually want to talk to the right people. I would rather spend a little more and reach the right audience. Can we make some adjustments and just get more people to click on things? Absolutely. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right thing for the end piece, whether, it's we want more eyeballs or we want more calls or, we want more sales. Just clicks. No business, doesn't matter what it is, runs on clicks.
No, but you brought up a great point there, which is if we go back to before digital and we look at some of the brands that have been built, like Pepsi and Coke and Kellogg's, uh, AT&T, if you will, and any auto manufacturer, before digital, the campaigns that they ran were TV, radio, out of home, billboards, and print, and even direct mail. So there's nothing to click on there at all. So you sit back and you say to yourself, how did they know what was working and what wasn't working? And I'll tell you, one of the things that they did back then is that when you had to set up campaigns, it was a lot of work. It's not like digital, we can go in and change something every day. So they would make sure they would kind of set it and forget it, and then they would sit and wait 3 or 4 months. And what they used back in the day before digital is they used math to determine the effectiveness, a technique called marketing mix modeling, a statistical technique that actually looks at correlation between how many eyeballs you're trying to reach and what your sales were. And it was a lot of work to get all of that data together back in the day. But these models, if you will, are very sophisticated statistical models, and they're able to prove that they actually work because what you end up doing is you end up asking the model on a certain day, you hold back the data. You say, on this day, we tried to reach 11,000 eyeballs, if you will, predict what our sales will be. And you can actually see that the models are able to predict. And so they learn, they get smarter over time. And so what happened when digital came in is those models sometimes would take 6 to 8 months to build out. It was a lot of work, a lot of people involved. You would also need like 3 years of data, which was ridiculous. So a technique started with digital called multi-touch attribution, and that leveraged all of the digital data. That was my first company. We would collect hundreds of billions of data points every single day for our clients. And then we would use machine learning to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And but what happened after COVID is the ability to collect that data, it's not there anymore. You can't get that level of detail. And so what we do now at our company, Provalytics, is we kind of go back to the future. We went back to that technique marketing mix modeling and we said, hey, there's things about it that aren't so bad, like the statistical part. It's very smart, but all of that data, do we really need to collect all that now with how fast computers are? And can we do better? Can we do it faster? And can we get more granular? And so now we're using very old school techniques, but giving modern day results, but with a full predictable model. So for very, very large advertisers, they're able to figure out, what's working, what's not working, find that missing half that's not working, stop spending there, and able to kind of redeploy their money in places that are actually working. But the answer is you have to use math, you have to use statistics in order to get there and you have to also trust, if you will, because you're using what we call a probabilistic model. It's not deterministic. It's not 100% because there's some data we can't get to. But the reality is what we've now learned over time is that when things were 100%, it really wasn't 100% because we can't get inside of people's heads and figure out what exact advertising actually made them make the decision. In fact, the truth is when you ask people, they really don't know themselves either because they can't remember all the times. Think about how many ads you see a day. It's very tough to tell. But what we're able to do is look at things in aggregate and then make an educated guess to help get to that best right answer. Or I should say the less wrong answer is the best way to look.
It's interesting when we start to take things from before and really give them that modern facelift, but kind of cut out that middle section where, there's been so much development in some pieces, but we almost lose the art of some of these other things where, there was a way of doing it before. Now, when you're talking about this modeling, I'll be honest, I go into the I need to know. We need to come over. We need to talk data. I need to dig into this model. But I know that that's not I know I'm a little nerdy. I figured that out a while ago. But I know that the average business owner thinks I need to do math. I need statistics. You've lost me. I'm out. I can't do this. So how can the average business owner who doesn't want to do math and doesn't want to know about statistics, but they know that they want to grow their business? They said, I have started growing this team, and the thing I hear over and over right now is the economy is not great, and that's it. It's like a harsh stop there. And it's like there's a lot of businesses out there that are still doing really well. Are there certain industries that are suffering more than others? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of successful businesses growing and carrying on right now. And I think that a lot of times when things stop working, we start to almost look for it can't be us. It can't be something we're doing. We look to the external and it's like, oh, well, economy's not great right now. Everybody's saying it. So that's why it's not working. And we're just going to try and, bumble along until that fixes. But really, there's things that we could be doing. We could still be. And so what kind of advice do you give to someone like that?
I would say my big takeaway in terms of kind of a DIY, what could I do today to do a better job to scale my advertising and understanding it is I would open up right now your Google sheet that you have of your ads. Everyone has it, or your agency has it. Whoever's buying your ads has it. And what I mean by that is on this sheet is a row typically for every single day. And there's a column for all the places where you've purchased. There's a column for how much you spent there. There's a column for how many clicks they got. And then there's a column that adds up the total clicks. And then there's another column that says cost per click. It tells you how many sales or leads you had, your cost per sale or your cost per lead. And that's pretty much it. And that goes along with what we talked about before, which is managing your marketing by clicks. And what I would do with that Google sheet is I would go up to the top and right next to the date field, which should be the one all the way to the left, you want to add a new column and you want to call it impressions because that's your eyeballs. And that is actually what you're buying. And what you want to do is go back for the last year. And you may say, oh, that's a lot of work. Trust me, it will be so worthwhile. You want to add that total impression column. Now, let's say you're advertising on both Facebook and Google. You want to go to each one of them, and you could probably download a report right now. And chances are, when you downloaded the report originally, or whoever's buying your advertising did, that field impressions was there, but it constantly gets ignored. And what you want is you want to make sure you have the number of impressions for every single day, for the rest of the last year. And what you're going to notice is if you scroll up to the top and then you start scrolling down, you're going to notice some days your impressions are higher than others. And you
Yeah.
may not notice your clicks are higher, but you may notice a couple of days later, or maybe a week or so later, all of a sudden you have more clicks and then you end up with more leads or sales. You want to understand what that division is, what that time frame is. And also you also can scroll and look at days or time frames where you had a lot of leads or a lot of sales, and then go up from there to see when were impressions high, what campaigns were running that were unique. You want to understand that relationship between how many impressions you had to how many clicks to how many sales, but there's a time delay. And that's what we call that days to conversion or time to conversion. Every campaign, every type of ad has a different days to conversion. Once you understand that, then you can start to set proper expectations for ads you buy. So, for example, if you start to notice, hey, we did something on Facebook that was unique, and all of a sudden, about a week and a half later, we got more people visiting our website, which led to more leads and more sales, like maybe a month or so later. Okay, great. Well, now you know if you do something on Facebook, you probably need to wait 3 or 4 weeks and let it run before you say whether it. And that's the important thing, because what we find with digital marketing is it's so easy to turn on, but it's also so easy to turn off. And what ends up happening is that business owners will try something new. They'll wait 2 or 3 days, and if they don't get the clicks, they'll shut it off. And that is not being data driven. So take a look at what you've done over the last year and use it as a guide. And the best way to do that is add in those impressions and start planning your marketing around eyeballs and not clicks.
Such valuable advice. And I think that we see that often where whether it's, any kind of advertising, whether it's SEO, whether it's some kind of ads, whatever, we turn it on, we spend a little bit of money, and before it's even really had a chance to do anything, it's already been determined that it didn't work. It's on the shelf. It's a sore spot in the business history, and we're not talking about it again. And it's like, hold up. Like, it takes a little bit of time, just like if anything in business, whether you hire a brand new person, that person is not, as valuable to you on day one as they are to you at the end of their first year. Anything takes a little bit of time to gain some traction, to fine tune. It's okay. So we were getting impressions, but we weren't getting clicks. We weren't getting impressions, with this other campaign. A lot of times, it's these big swings. It's we try something new and then we turn it. There's so much value in fine tuning and minor adjustments. And oftentimes people will say that didn't work, and now they're changing everything. They've deleted a whole campaign. They're running a whole and it's these big things and big changes. We changed everything about the page. We don't know which change worked. We don't know anything because everything is in too big a grand scale. It's just small adjustment.
You're 100% right on. Years ago, eBay made the decision that they were going to change the color of their homepage from 100% white to just having a slight minor pixel change with gray. So small of a change, you wouldn't even notice it. But they found that their homepage was their most valuable page on their site. And they were so paranoid that making this change could have an impact on revenue. They figured out how to make just a minor change every day for 30 days. Because the truth is, colors, like if you have an ad that is a blue background, I mean, how many different shades of blue are there? There's hundreds of thousands of different shades. And one of the things that we know about advertising and shopping is there's an emotional component that we can't comprehend. We don't really understand it. But we do know that certain things, people react to certain things. And so they spread out that change over the course of a month just to be 100% certain it didn't have an impact. And it did not have an impact. So they were able to make the change. But you're 100% right. Small changes can have huge, massive differences in revenue. And you have to really look at the numbers. And again, for business owners, it's like the bane of our existence. We don't like to look at the numbers because we're entrepreneurs. We always like to be positive. We don't want to be pessimistic. We're always too optimistic. And sometimes the numbers force us to be pessimistic or look at the reality of things. But when it comes to spending your hard-earned dollars on advertising, it's definitely something you want to look at. You have to look at those numbers and focus in on the impressions.
Absolutely. I think that it's, if you look at, we build business budgets for businesses in all different sizes. Businesses that are just starting out down to businesses who are trying to scale to $1 million a month and everything in between. And you look at it and the advertising section of a budget is, it's going to be less than your human component and less than your materials. But outside of that, it's going to be one of the bigger areas. And it's this piece that I think just often doesn't get enough love or enough knowledge. And business owners say, I don't really know enough about it. So they often hire someone who says they know a lot about it and then they get going. But, there's always this piece where I said that that person, the longer you run the ads, the more spend and all of these things, that's their business too. And so the internet has created a space where almost anyone can pretend that they're good at something, and I think that we are learning more and more about this online where someone has, claimed to be, someone that they, in the end, it's like, wait a minute, no, they weren't that at all. And I think that, these people come and they seem very trustworthy. We see it in the bookkeeping space. We see it in any, business coaching, advertising. All of these people are really great at selling their services. But then when they're not actually delivering, they haven't provided enough information to actually know. And business owners think, I've got this great person. They're super nice. They get on the call with me and I'm spending the money and they tell me it's, that it's coming. It's going to be great. And it's this piece of educating yourself enough, even if it's not something you're passionate about, but educating yourself enough that you know that you're getting the value for what you're paying for.
No, absolutely. And again, that goes back to that concept of incrementality. If you're spending a substantial advertising budget, you should see your business grow, especially from where it was before. Like if you weren't doing advertising and then you do, you should be getting more business. If you're not, then you start to question it. Now, obviously, advertising is expensive. It does become a large line item. And it is one of the largest line items for a lot of publicly traded companies as well. It gets a lot of scrutiny, but there's still a lot of questions because the truth is most large companies are still using very unsophisticated metrics and analytics for determining what's working and what's not working. That's why that saying half the advertising I do is wasted. Problem is I don't know which half. That's not just for smaller service-based businesses. It's also for some of the largest corporations in the world.
One of the businesses that I find their advertising the most fascinating, and I would love to hear you weigh in, is Red Bull. So Red Bull has been around for that industry for a very long time. Energy drinks come and go. Many have come and been super popular and have left in very short order. Red Bull has been around since, I remember my brother, before he was old enough to drink energy drinks, thinking Red Bull was the coolest thing ever. And I remember the first time he drank Red Bull, he was like, that was gross. And then all of a sudden, over years, he became this, it was like an acquired taste, but it was like they built this culture around the drink. And to this day, Red Bull, you go on any kind of Red Bull social media, they don't talk about the energy drink at all. It is all just cool sport, like amazing sports, different, mountain biking off the top of the mountain in the clouds, the high divers that are diving, like, all of these pieces. They don't talk about their energy drink ever. And so, but they've gone on to be super successful for a very sustained period of time. And I'm sure that all of those sports and things that they're filming are, that is not cheap to put out. I'm sure, those are super talented athletes and professionals that are being paid. And so that's not an inexpensive advertising campaign, but the actual way to measure how successful that has been something that in my mind, I think that's people believing in a vision for an extended period of time.
Yeah, so essentially what Red Bull is doing, they're not doing any traditional buy this product type marketing. It's not ads that say, here's the benefits to Red Bull, here's a discount, here's the
Except
price.
the wings. That's the benefit.
Right.
You get the wings.
Right. But primarily what they're doing is they're doing upper funnel branding. They're at that top of the funnel. They're trying to reach as many people as possible. And they're trying to create an emotional connection with their audience. So you will feel good about drinking and buying their product. And that's typically what you see with a lot of the larger brands. They tend to do more branding. Now, that's always been a question. How do you connect branding to actual sales? And we're able to do it with our statistics and our advanced math. You can absolutely positively do it because they did it years ago before digital. So digital hasn't upset that process. You can absolutely positively connect it. Now, with the type of advertising they're doing, there's no clicks, obviously, but there are eyeballs. They are buying eyeballs, and they know you can know how many estimated eyeballs you're reaching, what the estimated number of are impressions that are being had there, and you can add that into a mathematical model and figure it out. And what we're seeing now is that a lot of brands are moving more up funnel. One in particular, Airbnb, is doing more upper funnel branding marketing, primarily because that type of marketing, your reach is so much greater. So your return is also greater. Now, there's a caveat there. And the caveat is that if your message doesn't resonate with your audience, if your branding is wrong and there's not that emotional connection, it's not going to work. But if you
Totally.
go through the proper testing and do all of that, then you're in great shape. And Red Bull has proven time and time again that that daredevil type attitude is a great, if you will, advocate for their brand.
Hmm. Yeah, they've done an exceptional job. I saw someone online a few months ago, and she said that she was part of their, she was talking on, I think it was TikTok, about how she used to be part of their branding, and she was really promoting that same, you'll notice that Red Bull doesn't talk about what they do, and so you should be the same in your business. And I think that that key piece is the part that you mentioned there, that the messaging has to land, that people still have to understand, there's this, people know what Red Bull does. And I think that at the beginning, they probably had to do a little, now you just see their little logo in the corner of any, you know exactly what it is. But that took time to establish as well. And so, a business that is just getting started, it's choosing the appropriate strategy for where you are in your business journey, and not assuming that because it worked for someone else, there's so many pieces that you're mentioning going on in the background. eBay changing the color like so slowly. I mean, you have to realize that not every business phase is at that same piece. So when you're talking about the math and being able to study that, at what point in someone's business journey should they be really, there's the part where we're going to get out there, we're going to put the brand and we're going to build that. But when can they start actually measuring that? What's the kind of milestone that should make someone go, now I have this, I have some data coming in and I want to know what's working? How big do they need to be in order for that to make sense?
They don't have to be big at all. As long as they're spending even like $200 or $300 a month, you should be able to measure that. But you need to add those impressions to that Google sheet. And the measurement is simply just looking at the relationship between how many impressions you're doing each day and then that delay to clicks and then leads or sales. That, I mean, even though that's kind of a DIY measurement, it is measurement. Now, where someone goes from there is really dependent upon how many different places they're advertising. And this is where things get a little bit difficult. Like if you're advertising just on Facebook and you're only on Facebook, it's real simple. All you need to do is look at Facebook because you're not anywhere else. Facebook is going to give you a good understanding of how Facebook is performing. But when you get to Google, now Google doesn't know about Facebook and Facebook doesn't know about Google. That's when things get complicated. And as you continue to grow, and your marketing mix gets more complicated because there's more players, if you will, on the field, what ends up happening is that if you had 100 sales in a day, let's say, and you have 8 different advertising things going on every single day, and you go to each one and you say, how many sales did you get me when you log into their system? they'll probably all take credit for every single one. So even though you only have 100 sales, you'll end up with a report that'll say you had 800 sales. And that's this deduplication problem that each one of them doesn't know about the others. And their metrics are very good for measuring their impact, but they're not good for figuring out what else is going on in your universe. And that's where you need to use that Google sheet. But over time, as you continue to grow and you graduate into a larger advertising budget, so now we're talking in the tens of millions of dollars per year, at that point, you're going to need to bring in sophisticated modeling techniques that look at your business and that are able to use these statistical techniques to figure out what's actually working and what's not, because the Google sheet is going to get very wide, very deep, very quick, and you're not going to be able to see those relationships. And that's where the math comes in.
Absolutely. So outside of adding that impressions column, which I think is super valuable, and I know that a lot of people skip right over it. And I mean, we see a lot of different reports submitted and whatnot for different clients as well, and see that that's not always a metric that's necessarily highlighted. So outside of that, what else can someone do right away? They could go do next week that you feel like would make a big difference in their business.
Well, I think one of the things that people could also do is gain a better understanding of what's happening in terms of the digital landscape. Because the truth is that digital advertising is not going anywhere. It's taking over. Television is now all digitized, if you will, what we call CTV, connected television. Radio is no longer traditional radio, it's satellite radio, or we now call it audio, podcast advertising. And the problem with these are great places to be. And even as a small advertiser, you can now buy connected television. So someone can be at home watching something on Peacock streaming and your ad shows up. It's very, very cool. But the problem is there's no clicks there with this type of stuff. So that won't even show up as a click. They'll end up coming through your front door and you'll have no idea what's going on. So what's important to look at is to start looking at these other types of advertising that's also available. And one of the things that you can do is to understand this landscape better. And because things have changed a lot just over the last couple of years. And just over the last year or two, we're now kind of going back to the future to how things were before digital advertising. So if the person running your advertising in your business is someone who's in their 20s or 30s, and they've only known digital advertising, they didn't know how things were beforehand, they're probably a little bit lost. So I would suggest them to start taking some courses on understanding what are all these privacy changes that are happening. I'm a big believer in educating ourselves and strengthening our digital foundation, if you will. We actually put together a free course. It's an attribution certification course. So it helps people to understand what has happened in the past, kind of the past, present, and future of advertising. It's available for no cost on our website. It's about an hour and a half course. You get a great certificate that you can share on LinkedIn, which is great for some folks. But I think strengthening that foundation, a lot of folks don't pay a lot of attention to education, but the biggest problem with digital advertising is that it's changing every couple of months. And if your foundation is not solid, you're going to be lost very quickly. When you have a solid foundation of how we got to where we are, these changes won't rattle you so much and you'll be better prepared to kind of see around the corner, if you will. So I would say that besides the impressions, I would say the next best thing is to, get attribution certified, start taking some courses online, understand what's coming next, because that'll help for you to be a better marketer for your business.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And I think there's been, for a long time, there was a focus behind everybody needs to go to school. Everyone needs to go to school. And then you saw this real shift away from, post-secondary education. And I mean, there's a million stories of people who dropped out of high school and went on to do absolutely incredible, successful things. And I believe it can be done 100%. I chose the school route. I love school, but I think the key piece there is that there are specific things that you can't learn just because you have a great mind or you have a great vision and those types of things. And so either you need to go and learn them or you need to hire someone that you trust, that does know them. But some of these pieces can be the real difference maker between having a successful business and a massively successful business. Can you create success without knowing all of these little Sure, but are you actually stunting your success? And it could be so much grander by just learning some specific pieces and educating yourself enough to know who you can trust, who you can hire, and really how to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the key, because once you educate yourself, your foundation is solid, and it's a great spot to kind of springboard to better success.
Absolutely. So where can people connect with you? Where do you like to hang out? And what is that website that they can find that course on?
They can go to Provalytics.com. There is a link there that says Attribution Certification. And if they want to connect, they can find me on LinkedIn as well, too.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff. I think it's such a valuable discussion that can really help people take that advertising budget, make good use of it, and grow their business.
Don't forget to click subscribe, comment below, and share the episode with a fellow entrepreneur. If you want to take us on the road, we are available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much. See you next time.